A 38-year-old man was charged formally today following a horrifying killing that happened in Centerline on St. Patrick's Day, and it left a lot of questions unanswered.
Our officers arrived and found a female, 38-year-old female, that was shot with a single gunshot wound.
On the last morning of her life, Erica Sanders updated her Facebook cover photo and wrote something beautiful. She was single, she was choosing herself, and she was finally done carrying the weight she had borne for so long. Her catering business was thriving. Her children had a mother who loved them fiercely. Her future was opening like a door she had been too afraid to walk through for years. But here is what makes this story impossible to shake. 3 days earlier, the man she had stopped choosing, Zachary Fuqua, typed 4 words on his public page: "Going out with a bang." Her brother saw it, family saw it, and still nobody reached her kitchen in time. On that Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m., while her 5-year-old sat in the next room, Zachary raised a weapon and shot Erica in the back of her own head. She had woken up free that morning. She never got to end her day that way. This is the untold story of Erica Marie Sanders. Erica Marie Sanders built her life in the Detroit area, laying down roots that reflected both ambition and heart. She attended Martin Luther King High School before continuing her education at Macomb Community College, but her story didn't stop at academics. Erica was driven. She created something of her own, a catering business called A Slice of Soul. And that name wasn't just branding, it was a reflection of how she lived. Every dish, every event carried a piece of who she was. She had bookings ahead, plans in motion, and a future she was actively shaping. But at the center of everything were her 4 children, 2 daughters and 2 sons, ranging from just 5 years old to 17. They were her purpose, or the reason her days started early and ended late without complaint. Those closest to her describe a woman grounded in faith and generosity. Erica gave endlessly to her children, her community, and her work without expecting recognition. She balanced the quiet weight of everyday responsibilities, school schedules, meals, guidance, and the emotional support that often goes unseen. It was the kind of effort that holds a family together, even if no one stops to name it. She was building something stable, something lasting for herself and for her kids, a life meant to grow, to evolve, to reach milestones she had every right to witness. Before we begin, I just want to say I really appreciate you being here. People like you are the reason this channel exists. This is a space to give a voice to Black women whose stories are too often ignored. If this matters to you, consider subscribing. Every view and share helps these stories reach further and maybe bring justice a little closer. To make sense of what unfolded on March 17th, you have to look closely at Zachary Fuqua, not just at the end of the story, but at who he used to be. Because the version of him tied to this case didn't always exist. There was an earlier version, one that looked stable, grounded, even dependable. Scroll back through his social media, and that life comes into focus. He had been married to a woman named Ada Janaya, and in September 2020, he marked their 4th anniversary with a post describing himself as a man committed to providing for his family. They had purchased a home together, traveled, and built what appeared to be a steady life. He was also a father to an 11-year-old daughter, and the way he spoke about her felt sincere, consistent, affectionate, proud. He worked for Chrysler, lived in Warren, and carried the responsibilities that come with being a parent and a partner. On the surface, it was a life with structure, routine, and people who relied on him. That was the man Erica Sanders came to know. That was the person she welcomed into her world, the one her children grew familiar with. But over time, that image began to shift. His marriage ended, and not long after, he experienced a loss he openly admitted changed him. His mother passed away. Grief like that doesn't simply fade. It lingers, reshapes how someone thinks, reacts, and connects with others. In Zachary's case, it appeared to take hold in ways that weren't fully addressed. And while loss itself is something many people carry, the way it's handled can make all the difference. Because when pain is left unchecked, it doesn't stay contained. It starts to affect everything around it, including the people who may not even realize they're standing in its path. By July 2025, Zachary Fuqua had started sharing pieces of himself online, and not in a casual, everyday way. His posts stood out. They carried the tone of someone struggling, someone trying to make sense of something heavier than he could handle alone. That summer, he shared a photo of himself with his mother. It wasn't just a memory. It felt like a moment he couldn't let go of. Then in August, he posted again. By December 2025, his words became more direct, more personal. He wrote a long message addressed to his mother, speaking as if the distance between them hadn't fully settled in his mind. Read on its own, it sounded like raw grief, the kind that doesn't hide, the kind that spills out wherever it can. And on its own, that kind of expression isn't unusual. People mourn differently. Some turn inward, others reach outward. For some, social media becomes a place to process what they're feeling, to be seen, to be heard. But his posts didn't slow down. They intensified. By February 2026, the tone had shifted. The sadness was still there, but now it was layered with something heavier. Confusion, frustration, a sense of isolation. Then came early March. Between March 3rd and March 13th, the frequency increased, and so did the weight behind each message. He wrote about feeling disconnected from someone he believed he should have been aligned with. He described a sense of drowning, of reaching a breaking point, of not being okay in a way that felt more urgent than before. All of it was public. Anyone connected to him could see it unfold in real time. Erica's family saw it. Screenshots circulated. Notifications came through. Her brother Daryl, would later say he had been following those posts for weeks, and to him they didn't read like ordinary grief. They felt like a warning. So the issue wasn't whether the signs existed. They were visible, repeated, and escalating. The harder question is what happens next when those signs appear in plain sight. What responsibility falls on the people watching from the outside? When does concern turn into action, and what does that action even look like in a moment like that? Because while Zachary's online presence grew darker with each passing post, Erica was active online as well, and what she was sharing told a completely different story. On March 11th, just 6 days before everything changed, Erica updated her Facebook cover photo. The message on it was clear enough to stand on its own. Around that same time, she reshared another post that echoed a similar energy, reinforcing where her mindset was heading. A day later, on March 12th, her timeline shows something entirely different from the tension building elsewhere. She shared a proud moment as a mother, celebrating her son, his graduation, his upcoming prom, the milestones that mattered. It was a glimpse into her world, focused on her children, her business, and the future she was actively building. On March 14th, the same day Zachary posted something that would later raise serious concern, Erica posted again. Her message carried a tone of clarity and direction. Then on March 15th, she shared another post that continued that pattern, steady, intentional, and forward-looking. By the morning of March 17th, 2026, Erica made her position unmistakable. Her final post wasn't subtle or uncertain. It was direct. She expressed a decision to move forward on her own terms, to prioritize her peace, her well-being, and the life she wanted for herself and her children. It was a turning point, one she chose openly and without hesitation. But decisions like that don't exist in a vacuum. In situations involving strained or unstable relationships, that moment, when someone draws a clear boundary or signals they are stepping away, can carry serious risk. Advocates have long pointed out that the period when a person begins to separate is often the most volatile. It's when control shifts, when emotions escalate, and when the situation can become unpredictable. Now step back 3 days earlier to March 14th. Zachary Fuqua logged onto Facebook and posted just 4 words. No explanation, no context. just a short message left hanging in public view. People noticed. Erica's family saw it. Her brother, Daryl, later described how those posts had been building for weeks, each one adding to a growing sense that something wasn't right. To him, that particular message didn't feel random. It felt like a signal, like something was about to happen. And yet, from that moment on, March 14th through the late afternoon of March 17th, nothing interrupted the trajectory. No one stepped in to check on him. No direct intervention took place. The warning signs remained on screens, visible, shared, discussed, but never fully confronted in a way that could change what was already in motion. This isn't about assigning fault to the people who saw those posts and didn't step in. Even Daryl later said he wished he had been able to speak to Zachary before everything escalated. That kind of statement doesn't come from indifference. It comes from hindsight, from the weight people carry when they replay moments and wonder if one conversation could have changed the outcome. It's a burden that often lands on those left behind, even when the situation was never truly within their control. What this points to instead is a broader issue. We are more connected than ever, constantly exposed to each other's lives in real time. We see the warning signs, the emotional spirals, the public expressions of distress, but recognizing something is wrong and knowing how to respond are two very different things. There's often no clear path, no immediate support system, no simple way to intervene effectively. And in cases like this, that gap, the space between seeing and acting, can have devastating consequences. While those public posts continued, there were also private messages happening behind the scenes. Zachary had been reaching out to people close to Erica, trying to explain himself. He told them he was making an effort, that he cared deeply for her, that he envisioned a future where they were married. But Erica was not moving in that direction. By that point, her decision had already been made. She had stepped away from the relationship and she wasn't wavering. Everything about her actions, what she shared, how she spoke, the direction she was taking reflected that clarity. According to her sister, the situation ultimately came down to one central issue. Erica did not want to marry him. It wasn't complicated in her mind, but for Zachary, it was something he struggled to accept. That difference, one person looking ahead to a shared future, while the other firmly choosing to move on, created a tension that continued to build. And within that tension was another factor that made the situation even more serious. Zachary Fuqua had a prior conviction for carrying a concealed weapon, a charge that legally barred him from owning or possessing a firearm. He was not supposed to have access to a gun or ammunition under any circumstances, yet somehow he did. The details of how he obtained it have not been made public, but what is clear is that he had it with him that evening, inside a home where children were present, and that single fact shifted the situation from something already concerning into something far more dangerous. March 17, 2026, St. Patrick's Day. A Tuesday evening around 5:30 p.m. The kind of time when routines take over and everything feels predictable. Houses begin to quiet down, dinners are being prepared, and children move through the familiar rhythm of home. On Sterling Street in Centerline, Michigan, nothing stood out. It looked like any other evening. Inside that home, Erica was there with 3 of her 4 children. Her oldest, 17, was at an age where awareness comes quickly, where moments like these don't pass unnoticed. Her youngest was just 5 years old, still young enough to believe that as long as their mother was nearby, everything was safe. That sense of security filled the house. At least it did until it didn't. Zachary Fuqua was there as well. At some point that evening, a disagreement started in the kitchen. The details remain unclear. Erica's brother, Daryl, later explained that the family never fully understood what led to that moment. From what they were told, it was an argument, nothing more defined than that. He also made it clear that, to their knowledge, there hadn't been a history of violence leading up to this. No documented pattern, no prior incidents that had raised alarms in that specific way. just a confrontation between two people in a shared space. But something shifted in that moment. Whatever was said, whatever tension had been building, it reached a point that could not be undone. The argument ended with Erica collapsing onto the floor of her own kitchen. Prosecutors would later state that Zachary used a firearm during that encounter, acting without warning and leaving her no opportunity to react or protect herself. One moment she was standing in a space she knew by heart, and the next everything changed. The same kitchen where she had spent countless ordinary days preparing meals, caring for her children, became the scene of something irreversible. When officers from the Centerline Department of Public Safety arrived at the home on the 7,500 block of Sterling Street, they moved quickly. They found Erica on the floor and immediately began trying to save her. According to Public Safety Director Paul Mazinski, the officers initiated life-saving measures as soon as they reached her. They worked there in that kitchen, doing everything they could to bring her back. They didn't stop. They stayed with her, continuing their efforts, refusing to give up. But despite everything they tried, it wasn't enough. Erica Marie Sanders was pronounced dead at the scene. In a matter of moments, a 38-year-old mother of 4, a business owner, and a woman who had openly chosen a new direction for her life that very morning was gone. What began as an ordinary evening inside her home ended in a way no one in that house could have imagined. After it happened, Zachary Fuqua didn't call emergency services. He didn't remain at the scene or try to help. Instead, he turned to the children and handed them candy. In court, prosecutor Jonathan Witzek described that moment in detail. How, as he prepared to leave, he offered them something small and ordinary, speaking to them as if the situation around them hadn't just changed forever. Then he walked out, leaving them behind in a home that no longer felt the same. That single action raised difficult questions. It wasn't something that could be easily explained or understood. It suggested a level of detachment that stood in stark contrast to the gravity of what had just occurred. Whether it reflected confusion, emotional disconnection, or something else entirely is something the legal process would later examine. He left the house on foot. No vehicle, no clear direction, just movement. But even as he moved through the neighborhood, he stayed connected to his phone. While officers from Centerline and Warren began searching for him, he continued posting online. In one message, he wrote that the truth finally came out. The meaning behind that statement was never clearly defined, but the tone stood out. It didn't reflect urgency or fear. It read more like a conclusion, as if in his mind, something had reached its endpoint. Meanwhile, law enforcement responded quickly. Officers secured the home on Sterling Street while others worked to locate him nearby. The search didn't stretch far. Within less than a mile, near the intersection of 10 Mile Road and Wainwright Street, they found him. There was no confrontation when they approached. No attempt to resist. He stopped, and officers took him into custody without incident. Back on Sterling Street, investigators worked through a scene that left a lasting impression even on seasoned officers. Inside that home was the aftermath of something no family prepares for: a mother gone, children trying to make sense of a moment that had just reshaped their lives, in a space that had once been safe now marked as a crime scene. News spread quickly. Erica's family arrived to find the house surrounded by police tape, the reality of what had happened setting in all at once. In the hours that followed, their grief was immediate and unfiltered. It wasn't something that could be explained or contained, it simply existed in the rawest form. Her niece, Amia Price, spoke publicly soon after. What she said captured the weight of the betrayal in a way few things could. She spoke about a promise, one he had made as her godfather, assuring her that he would look out for her aunt. 3 days later, on the morning of March 20th, 2026, Zachary Fuqua appeared in court from inside the Macomb County Jail. He sat restrained. From the 37th District Court, Judge Suzanne Fonts read out the charges: second-degree murder, possession of a firearm by a prohibited individual, possession of ammunition under the same restriction, along with 3 additional felony firearm counts. 6 charges in total. As the case moved forward, one question began to surface repeatedly. Why was the charge second-degree murder instead of first-degree? Under Michigan law, first-degree requires proof that the act was planned in advance, that there was clear, deliberate intent before it happened. Second-degree applies when an intentional act occurs without that established pre-planning. At this stage, prosecutors focused on what they could directly support with evidence from that evening: the argument, the immediate circumstances, and what followed. The social media posts leading up to March 17th raised additional questions, particularly whether they could be interpreted as signs of intent. That determination would be left to the legal process as more evidence was examined. For now, prosecutors stated that the charges reflected the strongest case they could present based on what was available at the time. If convicted on the murder charge alone, the potential sentence would mean spending the rest of his life in prison. Outside the courtroom, the community responded in its own way. People came together to support Erica's children, both emotionally and financially. A fundraiser was organized to help with funeral costs and to provide some stability for the 4 kids she left behind. Because beyond the immediate loss, there was another reality. Erica had been the one managing everything: the routines, the responsibilities, the daily structure that kept their lives steady. On March 28, 2026, 11 days after her death, people gathered at Corrigan Playground at Alter Road and Warren Avenue. They stood together for a candlelight vigil, releasing balloons into the sky as they remembered her. It was a quiet but powerful moment, one where the community paused, not to change what had happened, but to acknowledge it, to stand together in its aftermath. In that space, Erica was not reduced to a case or a headline. She was remembered as a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a godmother, and above all, a mother. And while her life had ended, the impact of that loss continued through the lives of the 4 children she left behind. Children who now had to grow up carrying a reality they never chose. What makes this case linger isn't only the loss itself, it's everything that was in motion before it happened. The plans she was making, the milestones ahead, the version of her life that was just beginning to take shape. Cases like this leave behind difficult questions for any community, not just about what happened, but about what could be recognized earlier, what signals might be missed, and how people respond when something feels off but isn't fully understood yet. It calls attention to the quieter indicators: changes in behavior, emotional instability, moments that don't quite add up but don't yet demand action. It also highlights the importance of removing stigma around seeking help. Conversations about mental health and relationship safety are still often avoided or minimized, and that silence can allow situations to escalate unchecked. Recognizing distress, taking concerns seriously, and responding with support rather than dismissal can make a difference long before a situation reaches a breaking point. For those navigating these realities, support doesn't end at the moment of leaving. The process of rebuilding, emotionally, mentally, and practically, can take time, resources, and consistent care. That ongoing support is just as critical as the initial intervention. Erica's life touched many roles: daughter, sister, aunt, mother, business owner. Those roles don't disappear with her absence. They continue through the people she left behind, especially her children, who now carry forward without her presence. Her story remains as part of a larger conversation, one that continues long after the headlines fade. Like, subscribe, and share this video to raise awareness and honor Erica's memory. Every share helps spread the message about domestic violence and the importance of listening to warning signs.